This is the One Step Better podcast. Helping small businesses make wins each and every week. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of the One Step Better podcast. I am Mike, and with me, of course, is Mr. Matt. Welcome, Matt.
What's up, man?
I like your shirt, man.
Thanks.
Looks good.
New T-shirts.
We're in the 901.
We're in the 901.
You know, there's a lot of times in which your customers are going to come to you and say, hey, do you guys do XYZ? Or do you do LMNO? And you're going to have an answer that is less than appealing, and that answer is going to be no. But if too many customers ask the same question over and over again, they're going to eventually turn that no into a maybe I should think about this.
Yep.
And that is eventually going to turn into the launch of a new product or service, but depending upon what type of business you're in. And so today what we're going to talk about is some of the lessons that we've learned as we've launched some different things, and some have been great, some have been not so great, and hopefully provide some empathy out there for you guys that are thinking about doing the same thing. And so here's going to be the context for today's conversation. In about a week, we are currently working on putting together some stuff that we're going to announce in about 1 week of a brand new service that Whirks is offering that I believe is going to be really, really impactful.
It's earth-changing. No, it's
earth-changing.
It's not.
It is. It will revolutionize the world. But it is, all joking aside, it is a really big offering that we're about to put out there, and we're going to announce it fully in about 1 week, and we're really excited about it. And so make sure that you check out our website, Whirks.com, on October the 4th to see exactly what's going to be announced. But in that process this is something that I know that I've been preparing for and getting ready for periodically over almost 3 years, honestly.
Yep.
And it's taken a long time because there's a lot of things that go into getting this right. And there's some lessons that I've learned that we're gonna talk through and share. And I know that Matt has launched multiple new things over the course of the life of Patrick Accounting. And so we're gonna try to share some of the wisdom. Hopefully it's wisdom. At worst, life skills.
There's some mistakes we've made.
There's been a lot of mistakes that we made. But Matt, I want you to think through. So way back when we had this accounting service that was really rocking and rolling. It was awesome. And then we decided, you know what? We're going to offer this new service where we're going to start paying people's bills. Leading up to that, what were some of the things that you learned about what it took to actually get this brand new thing fully off the ground?
Well, it started with, do we have the processes in place to even begin to think about doing it? Do we understand the volume that we're going to be walking ourselves into? That was oh my gosh, I'm not sure I want to get into all that. That seemed like a bunch of work. Technology kind of drove that, though. Hey, there's some technology that really, I think, would make this a lot easier for our customer and for us. And I think this would be where we're able to give timely information. And it just seemed like a lot of the pluses were obviously outweighing the negatives there. And so it allowed us to go, hey, if we were to do this, would you be interested in that? We would start just asking current existing clients, like, yeah, that would be great. We would love to talk to you about that. That's kind of how that started. And we were, we signed up our two of the biggest bill pay clients we still have are those first two that were like, hey, here's
the early days,
gazillion bills a week. Yeah. And so I'm like, that may have been we didn't make money on it at first, but we did figure it out in a hurry. But yeah, it was the idea that there's a definitely need in the market for it. The lack of someone in their office to do that role existed in a lot of places. And I think that's similar to what we see with a lot of other services we've decided to roll out over the years.
The helpful thing is it really aligned with our mission.
Yep, absolutely.
It was directly in line with one of our things that we try to help simplify financial complexities, people complexities dependent upon the brand. All in is we're trying to help small businesses win more, and taking things off their plate to be able to do some things to support them is one of the ways in which we do that. And Bill Pay really lined up with that, and it did. It helped us. Yep. It helped us help them for sure, but it also helped us grow in a lot of ways.
But it started with need. I feel I wasn't selling them something they didn't need. I was selling them something they absolutely needed, and it was going to help them be more efficient in their own business, which helped them at the end of the day make more money and win.
Yeah. I think that one of the things that you always say is we got to start somewhere. We got to have a version 1, and whenever I think about, what we're about to launch here in the next couple of weeks, is really a version 1 for something that has been in, I'll say, mini beta for quite some time. And we've done some of this stuff in some ways for some clients in very incremental steps to try to learn some processes and how we're going to handle this. And if that stays in that beta overly long, it gets to the point where, what are we doing?
Correct.
Because we're waiting for perfect to happen. And I think one of the detriments of trying to launch something new is never launching something new because you're afraid of, well, what if it fails, or it's not ready, and it's never going to be ready.
It's never going to be ready.
Yeah.
Ever.
Perfect is the enemy of good.
Yep.
In a lot of ways.
It is. And, every version of Windows or, every operating system that come out from Apple or every software you've ever seen had a 1.0 version, and no one's on 1.0 anymore because there's always going to be increments. But you got to start from somewhere. That biggest jump is from 0 to 1. It's not from 1 to 1.1 or whatever. It's okay. We've now out there. Let's go. I'm a big believer that let's try it. If it doesn't hurt, we'll fix it or kill it. But let's go at least attempt 1.0 first.
Yeah, and I know, I'm not smart enough to know all of the things that need to happen to make this thing perfect anyway. And so we got to get something in the hands of our users so that they can actually give us some feedback to say, well, what about this? Or can we switch that? Or can we change that? Or can we do that differently?
And all of our services have evolved that way anyway. Like think about how we did payroll 15 years ago was way different than we do it today. And bill pay even today is, we've been doing that now for 13 years. I feel like that still evolves. We're still having conversations about, well, we should do this with this way or this or that way. And we've changed that. I mean, those are services, not necessarily products, but it's the same thing. So like if you're a restaurant, you've tried it's a special this week. Well, that was a great, maybe that we put on the menu all the time, right? You know what, we're going to try this. If you're, McDonald's, you have pick, 4 for 4 or whatever. They try different things. And it's the idea of, how do we really roll out this new idea or concept or service or product in an appropriate way? Yeah.
The thing you got to hedge against, though, is I don't want it to go too fast where it falls flat and I missed the mark and now I'm just out a bunch of money and I got to start back from the beginning. And so you still have to do a little bit of prep time. I don't want to go too much, too fast, too quick, full steam ahead. I think about Chick-fil-A and the way they do their target markets or their market analysis stuff, where it's mac and cheese was like that for a long time. You couldn't get mac and cheese anywhere in the country except for a handful of Chick-fil-A stores. And now they have mac and cheese everywhere. Yep. And so you got to find opportunities to roll some little things out.
Spicy nuggets. We need spicy nuggets.
Spicy nuggets would be awesome.
I'm telling you, Chick-fil-A, awesome. I got you $1 million idea. Yeah. Probably $1 billion idea.
That's probably something that they've thought about. Yeah. And there's got to be a reason why, right? It's got to be.
Spicy chicken breast right there.
I know. Like, how much different is it? How much different is it? Yeah. Anyway. I think it's important to take your time, but also don't take too much time. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Is because I know for me, I like for all of the ducks to be in a row that I can see a clear picture of how things are going to work and flow through. And if I get too caught up in that, then I forget to push the send button. Yeah. And then next thing you know, I'm just sitting in an R&D think tank and never actually getting anything out into the market. That's tough.
That's a common. I think our lot of our clients, wouldn't matter what it is, it's paralysis by analysis, and you go, well, but what about if this happens, or what about if that happens? Like, well, if those things happen, we will figure it out. Let's go figure it out. That's where my eternal optimism comes in. We said this in a prior podcast. I'm an eternal optimist, so everything's going to work out perfectly. Yeah. But yeah, that's where I kind of lean to. Like, I'd rather just let's try it. Let's go. Yeah.
So at what point do you start to look at and think through, it's time, I need to do something different? Like, is it just, what, my existing services are stale, or maybe I'm just bored and don't really have too much excitement about the work anymore? At what point is it time to start thinking through, I need to do something different?
In my mind, I always think through the process of it being, and is there a way that I could better serve my existing customers that I'm already serving? And is there a need for something I think I can produce in our world repetitiously in a systematized way on a recurring basis that will blend in well with the other services we're already providing? Do I have the people on my team that can do that work in an easy way, that it would, not easy way, but in the best way possible? And are we providing something that my client really, really needs? Like, this is something that the market is asking for.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where we started from.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite stories is it's Burger King, and Burger King wanted to launch a chicken sandwich. And one of the big consultant guys that came in from a marketing firm, and Burger King was like, "Hey, we need you to figure out what's the best way to launch this new chicken sandwich." And he told all the guys, "All right, follow me, come outside with me." And they went outside and they looked at the building and said, "All right, what does that sign say?" It says Burger King. And the marketing consultant guy just looked at him and all and said, "You don't need to be offering a chicken sandwich." And that was his advice.
Well, that may have been a mistake.
Well, I mean, depends on what you think about Burger King chicken sandwich.
I love their chicken sandwich. I'm just kidding.
But I think that concept is important to remember, because what you mentioned is one of the places that we start with is what are some complementary things that we believe can kind of fit into what we already do.
Our sandbox.
Our sandbox, yeah. And it fits our client base. It fits the people that we're trying to serve, and it helps move them along in the way that we're set up to try to move them along. And that's very different than if I am trying to launch something brand new that doesn't line up with anything I'm doing, because that's a lot harder than it is to say. And Burger King does offer chicken, and they probably do it pretty well. Somebody lost that deal. But it's very different if I'm Burger King launching a chicken sandwich than if I'm Chick-fil-A launching a spicy chicken nugget.
Right.
And so you have some built-in,
the synergies that go in with having like-kind customers, like-kind services. I think about like the businesses that always amaze me, and we talked about this before when people decide to expand or grow. Like, hey, we have one restaurant here, and we've opened another restaurant here. We're going to open another one 600 miles away from here. And I'm like, that's not what I would have thought about.
Can you do that? Sure.
It's a lot harder.
Is that the right
but
step?
Like if you are a pizza joint and you decide now I'm going to start opening up, burger restaurants, or I'm going to put burgers in there, like you may not have the right equipment in your place.
Yeah.
So just understanding what your mix is or your service offering is, you see a lot of it with service providers trying to do everything out of one thing. And that's, if they all align, that's perfectly fine, but not everything always aligns. There's a lot of, small business services that we wouldn't be best suited for today to offer those services. I'm not an IT guy, but IT services is one that I think of like, well, my same customer, it's a whole other world and risk than we're on today. Yeah. So I'm like, I'm not ready to do that. I don't have the resources in-house to do that work.
And I think it's also important to remember it's going to take you a lot longer than you think it's going to take to actually get that ready to go. One of the things I even think back, we did a rebrand a few years ago, and you got the nice shirt on, right? You're wearing the right brand, the right logo.
Yeah.
But prior we were Patrick Payroll, and for a variety of reasons we wanted to get away from that brand, and we moved towards Whirks. And it was a year or two later that we're still seeing Patrick Payroll stuff pop up. That's like, oh, I forgot that even existed. I forgot that we even set that up, or didn't even know that was still there. And it's not launching something new is very similar. There's going to be things that you just didn't quite think about.
Yep.
And so start as early. It's impossible to be over-prepared when it comes launch day. You will always be under-prepared. Doesn't matter how much you've gotten ready. Doesn't matter how long it's taken. It's still going to not be enough to be perfect. And that's where you just got to go.
So how do you think, how do you kind of figure out if the market is actually wanting or needing the services what are some ideas there as far as figuring out whether or not the market's wanting the services you're thinking about providing that aren't currently available or not a local provider or whatever it may be?
Yeah, my first thought is that your customers will tell you that. You have to, obviously you have to be in tune with your customers, which you should be anyway, regardless.
We get that a lot, right? It's like, hey, do you guys do this?
How can you help me with this?
We refer you to this, or how do you do this? Like, we don't do that right now. We thought about doing it later.
It's one thing if, hey, you know what? Once every 3 years, somebody asks about X, and if I'm at a restaurant and once every 3 years somebody comes in and is like, oh man, you guys really need to serve lobster bisque. Well, that's not time to go put lobster bisque on the menu.
Right.
But if every day somebody's coming in and saying, and it's a different person,
right.
they're coming in and saying, you need lobster bisque, that would be really great. Then at some point you need to start asking the question. So I think it starts with you're in tune with your customers, you're understanding what they're wanting and what they need. And they're also talking about it, they're requesting it. And you have some feedback loops internally to get that information to the appropriate people that can make those types of decisions. That's where I would start, because it doesn't make sense to go too far down the road with something that nobody's going to buy. And if you're super sophisticated and you have a big budget to figure this stuff out, then, you could go do a market survey. You could go ask the right questions, go hire a research firm to figure out what's missing. but most of the people that we're dealing with, they're not doing that.
As we do this new idea or new service line, I think it aligns perfectly with our current mission, which is, simplifying financial and people complexities. And so for me, it made a lot of sense for us to go this route. It's very complementary to what we are already doing. It's already something we've kind of been doing anyway, or parts of it, and we just weren't always getting paid for it, honestly. But also, it really does get us to our end goal, which is how do we make our clients' lives easier? And that's where I'm like, I like in this instance, it's like the idea that it's exactly along the same mission. We're not having to recreate the wheel when it comes to all this stuff. It's not a whole new thing. It's just it's an enhancement to a service we were even providing before.
Without giving away too much, so 7 years ago, there was some legislation that was introduced that forced payroll companies to be more involved in a benefits area, employee benefits with ACA. And a lot of insurance brokers out there who some people would say should have taken on that burden, essentially as a group, almost all together, unilaterally said, we're not doing it. And it forced payroll providers to figure some things out. And over time, that's put payroll providers into the, I'll say, advisor seat when it comes to things related to ACA and benefits and stuff like that. Well, that also turned into, well, maybe that's an HR question, and I need to get my HR people in line with that. And so that's all of those things over the past multiple years has really turned into, well, how can Whirks really serve this weird market where people need help with things that they don't understand because it's not their wheelhouse. And yet there's quite a few people that are out there saying, well, I'm not really going to help. And it aligns great with, well, as a payroll provider, we already know who your employees are. We already know how much they're working. We already know, what benefits they're electing into. We already know so much about your company that this new service line that we're going to launch in 1 week. So make sure you check Whirks.com to learn about it.
Doing a great job.
I'm trying, man. I'm trying.
I love it. Good job.
It just made a ton of sense. Like, man, there's a big gap here because we get a ton of questions around how can I do X or can you make this easier? And I don't want to say too much, but we get a ton of questions around. I feel like you guys can fix this issue, and the reality is, yes, we can.
Have all the stuff.
We can.
All the stuff.
Yeah. And so for the past couple of years, it's not are we or aren't we? It's going to be how are we going to do it? And now we have that stuff all lined out, ready to roll. And it's going to be I'm super excited about it too, because it's going to be really helpful to the clients that we serve, and it's going to be something that really changes the way. I'll say the depth of which we can actually serve and help the clients that we're working with.
So how do you make sure the promotion of it gets around everybody in your organization? Everybody knows why we're doing it, how it's gonna, how does that communication channel either happen with sales and marketing or your back of the house operations, or just knowing okay, what are we doing this for? How do we roll that out?
For me, that's been the hardest part is because I know in my mind how I want this to work. And that's very different than making sure everybody else knows how this is going to work. And that's where it starts with communicating early and often. Because in our case, we have to create some SOPs around what we're doing. We have to make sure that we understand what's really driving value in the market. And all of that information has to be communicated to our sales team, to our marketing team, to our operations team, to our admin team. Anybody that is going to pick up a phone needs to be able to answer some basic questions.
What do we actually sell?
Yeah. Hey, we said that we do this, and I don't know what this is not what I want to hear my team say. And so there's a lot of cascading messages that go around. And the only way that can get delivered is by having the forethought of thinking through what everybody needs to know and actually delivering that information. And it's hard. It's hard to get everybody together and all of the information out. We deal, if you're familiar with the DISC profiles, most of our operations people are high C people, which means they're cautious. They want to know all the details. They don't ever want to be caught off guard with not knowing something. That's not my natural bend. And so I have to overly make sure that I am communicating things that would, in my mind, would be, I'll figure that out when it pops up. But in their mind, it is, I want to be over prepared in case there's a 1% chance that question ever gets asked.
Yeah, what do I do if they call them and ask me that?
Yeah. And
here's your
you got to think through a lot of stuff.
And go, here's your response.
Right.
That's a wonderful question. You should talk to Mike.
Yeah. Or hey, you know what? Let me. I got some materials for that. Let me get back to you.
Yeah.
Or something like that, because it doesn't matter how much you prepare. You're not going to be prepared enough.
Correct. Yeah.
And so we want to do our best to make sure everybody's equipped, that sales knows what's going on, that marketing knows what's going on, that all the assets are being built the appropriate way. But at the end of the day, I can promise you in a week from now, whenever all of this stuff launches, there's going to be something that pops up that we didn't think to or didn't get right.
It's going to be perfectly rolled out.
It's going to be perfect, right?
Yep.
It's going to be perfect. Yeah. But it is. It takes a lot of time, and there's a lot of people that has to get involved with it.
Well, I'm excited about it. I know you've done a lot of work to get to here. I know it's something that I think we can really continue to help our clients succeed and win, and it makes their lives easier, which is why I'm all about it.
Yeah.
Excited to have it come out.
It's going to be fun. Again, in 1 week on Whirks.com, WHIRKS.com, and you're going to see a lot of fun things that is going to allow our clients to be better served. Thanks, everybody, and have a great day. Thanks for listening to the One Step Better podcast. I'd really appreciate it if you would take some time to rate us 5 stars on your podcast player of choice, and make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you never miss out on another episode. Thanks, and have a great day.